Hey everyone, and welcome to the Min City Soccer Show. This is our World Cup kickoff show, and I'm with my co-host David Gusler. David, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're all wearing United States national team kits right now, so I'm feeling pretty good. Doesn't feel like the World Cup's actually here, but here we are.
Well, we also have a very special guest coming back to the show again, Vaughn Pollman. Nice to have you back on, man.
Hell yeah, I'm pumped to be here. I mean, this is so exciting. This is a once every 8 years kind of thing that we get to throw on these U.S. men's national team jerseys and celebrate a World Cup here. So I'm pumped.
All right. So as I mentioned, this is our kickoff show. Next week we'll be getting into the nitty-gritty of group play, and we will have other guests on at that time to cover the respective teams that they have chosen to represent throughout the tournament. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Follow us on YouTube, like, subscribe, and get notified when new episodes drop. These will be coming out weekly, and we're going to be doing videos for all of these, so be sure to check them out. We've got a lot to cover, but I wanted to start with some just basics. This may be the first time you're watching the World Cup, or you would like to just hear some of the general details about the tournament. So this World Cup tournament will be held in 8 different stadiums across Qatar. The furthest distance between any 2 stadiums is around like 45 miles. So this is going to be one of the most densely packed tournaments ever. The tournament will run from November 20th to December 28th. And we'll have 32 teams broken out into 8 groups of 4. If you're kind of wanting to know who are the odd favorites right now, and this could change. Right now, it's basically Brazil, then France, Argentina, England, Spain, Germany, Netherlands, and then Belgium. Like I said, that's the odds right now. That's not our odds. That's what I've seen online. And like I said, that could change. But guys, this tournament is very unique, very awkward, somewhat sketchy. So let's get into the tournament in general. Let's start with you, David. FIFA's sketchy in general. And like I said, this tournament is not getting off to a good start. Do you want to kind of take us through a couple of things about this tournament that's already got some red flags?
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, and maybe you're new to this, FIFA is not typically known as a pillar of, ethics, compliance, whatever you want to look at from this perspective, right? They've had a history throughout the years, going back to the 70s and 80s, really documented multiple scandals, right? You've got presidents from FIFA taking bribes, people paying their way to host FIFA World Cups, right? Most recently, Russia, I think, was going to be one of the most recent ones to kind of pay their way to host. And then now, currently, rumor has it that, Qatar is one of the most recent ones, right? And for those who are aware, Qatar is not really the most welcoming nation out there in terms of different political views, beliefs, backgrounds for different people. And so there's been a lot of buzz from that perspective, right? There's also the economic impact from FIFA hosting World Cups, right? Brazil, most notably, a few years ago, spent millions and billions of dollars building these brand new stadiums and building, kicking people out, essentially, of their neighborhoods to build these new stadiums. And once you're built, you host the World Cup, and then what happens to the stadiums? They typically sit there. They typically go away. They just rot, essentially. Very similar to what you see in China with most of the Olympic stuff that they built many years ago, right? So there's a lot of scandals that kind of happen with FIFA, and this one is definitely not going to shy away, I don't think, from people's beliefs, people's, tying it into their beliefs when it comes to the World Cup. And then, obviously, I think we're hosting the show on Friday night. Most notably, there was a scandal that just came out where Qatar was, in the New York Times did a article where it is found out that Qatar is paying for fan ambassadors to go to the World Cup, to basically pay for them to go across the country, across the world, pay for their hotel or tickets and stay, and then have to post positive experiences from their visits there during that time frame. But what's interesting on that, and if you go into the New York Times article, there's like a snitch clause, per quote unquote, where if you find somebody posting things negatively or not being positive based off their experience after accepting this, you're obligated to quote unquote snitch or tell Qatar basically of this experience. So lots of not great views from that perspective. But Vaughn, I mean, I know we were talking offline a little bit about this, but what do you want to add to it? And like, what's been your personal perspective when it comes to FIFA and really the scandals throughout the years?
I mean, I can tell you I'm personally trying to make sure I don't have any of my dollars going to support this World Cup, quite frankly. There's a lot of ethics that have been drawn into question. We want to support the sport. We want to support the growth of the sport, both domestic and abroad. But the behavior of FIFA and the corruption of FIFA and other governing bodies over the sport, it can make it difficult from an ethics side of things. I mean, migrant slave labor, not great. People literally getting killed or dying from building these stadiums. Really hard to support that. They're requiring people that are visiting Qatar to download tracking apps. Nothing nefarious to see there, It's just I don't think it's a very inviting situation, right? Like I would have no interest to make it to this World Cup. And I have to think about that of like compartmentalizing, like I'm supporting the sport. I'm not supporting these organizations that are behaving in these nefarious ways. So it's that moral gray area that unfortunately is in the spotlight here. And we can't have the World Cup in just any country. Like that's part of it. They want to grow the sport in certain markets and certain places. And we've seen what it can do for a country, right? Like 1994 changed the landscape of American soccer. And that's why they try to have this. It is the World Cup, and they want to highlight different countries around the world, and some of those countries that don't have an established network and an established framework for the sport. And so hopefully some of that can happen for Qatar. But otherwise we have to really compartmentalize and just kind of move forward with supporting the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of pros and cons to hosting a FIFA World Cup, right? I mean, you touched on it, like 94 here in the United States really was kind of a turning point when it came to the World Cup, right? It was a positive perspective from that. The United States is going to be able to host the World Cup again. We're really, North America is going to be hosting the World Cup again here in a few years, and you're going to see some benefits and growth from that. But you can't really turn a blind eye from really what FIFA has done in the past. And it's not just a one-time thing. I mean, it's pretty well documented over the years. Presidents taking bribes, CONCACAF being involved and having votes paid for.
Invaded. No, you were going to say invaded.
Right? It's just right. I was. But CONCACAF was invaded by FIFA. It's okay. But it's a pretty well documented thing, and it's unfortunate because soccer is such a sport that really does bring people together. I mean, case in point, here we are talking about soccer, right? I mean, soccer is what brought us together and introduced us, as friends, right? And so it's definitely got some positives to it, but unfortunately, when you have money involved at the world scale and at the scale that is FIFA, you're unfortunately going to have a lot of negatives that come along with it as well. But Swift, what do you think from it?
Yeah, so the 94 World Cup is what got me into soccer, right? Or really kind of jump-started my fandom. The other really weird thing about this tournament is that it's being played in November.
Yeah.
So again, just didn't get off to a good start from the very, very beginning. I believe, I can't remember if we did a solo bid for this year's World Cup or it was a collective bid, but we were up to host this World Cup, but Qatar got it, and then now we're having to play in November, right in the middle of seasons. You have that, and then you have the MLS players, like they're out of season. They're not playing, or most of them are not playing unless they're in the MLS Cup final. So it's just an odd situation, and we're seeing players get injured now that's not going to be in this tournament. So I wish FIFA would do better. I feel like we say that every tournament. It just keeps going, and at this point, I don't know what could be really done about it. Hopefully, better people get involved. I feel like we say that about politics too, like local politics. I'm like, all we need is just better people to run, and sadly, it just never happens.
Well, and I mean, you touched on it. I mean, FIFA's got a pretty big stranglehold on this. I mean, they do have a lot of power, and they can swing what they want to do, right? I mean, there's been talks of changing the World Cup from every 4 years to potentially every 2 years. And, a lot of teams and money, right? There's money involved. They're making decisions and thoughts with just money on their mind, right? And unfortunately, it's one of those things where until I see it, I think they're going to have the power until teams or players really sit out and make a statement and say, hey, this is what we're not going to do. And until that time happens, FIFA's going to control what they want to do. And, I mean, you're right. Like, the United States did have a solo bid to host this World Cup, and then it's pretty well documented that, votes were bought to kind of get Qatar there in that space. So, it's a shame that even though people know what happened behind the scenes, it's still happening, and they're still moving forward with it for what it is.
I personally cannot wait for the Netflix documentary that is going to put Sepp Blatter on absolute blast. I think I might be more excited about the documentary than the actual World Cup. That's not true, but I really, it's going to be good TV.
It's sure. Netflix did a really good job on timing on that because they've been sitting on that for a while. And, so you know what, we're going to wait till the week before the World Cup, and we're going to launch it then.
David, you were talking about and kind of alluding to the fact that our team's going to ever boycott or fans going to boycott, and that's the kind of the sucky thing about this is that the World Cup happens every 4 years, and people are so passionate about the sport and their team, and they wanna root for their team. So there's this weird dynamic. Is like I want to represent my team, but I hate the tournament and like what it's kind of about. So at what point is there a tipping point where like fans just stop watching it, and to your point, like, do teams stop going? And then if they stop going, I'm pretty sure that the tournament will just probably continue, and then they'll just get so it's this weird dynamic that I wish we could figure that out, because it really does suck at the moment.
Well, and I almost think that I don't know if it will happen, because these players have such small windows. It's every 4 years. And after 3 World Cups, you've been eligible for 12 plus years, right? And so it's almost like your prime is gone after 2 World Cups almost. Like, that window is so small. And if you sit out of one, that could be your window. As you know, we're U.S. fans. We missed out on that quote-unquote golden generation because we missed a World Cup, right? And there's been time and time again where we just missed that window. So,
well, and it's also the global sport, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have read, and if for anybody listening, I encourage you. It's a long read, but the book Soccernomics covers a lot of like the socioeconomic and socio-political ties to different countries and their success in the sport, and predicting, that socio-political and socioeconomic factors are what are going to dictate teams that are successful in the future, right? So like, we're talking about the conflicts that are going on in the world, right? Like, we've had World Cups that have bookended world wars. Like, that we're not at that point. So, there's a period of time where Germany is going to have a very strong team because There's certain political powers that are trying to make sure that happens. And, you know, in the future, it's likely that China, just like in the Olympics, is winning a lot of gold medals, is potentially going to have a very strong, you know, team in the footballing world. So those are factors, and that's why the World Cup is so special and so unique, especially compared to other sports, is because it's the only place where we really get to see that play out.
Yeah, and then if you look at the individual players, I mean, the World Cup can make you a ton of money, right? I mean, we've talked about Swiderski a lot. We're like, do we want him to have a good World Cup? Because if he does, he probably will leave. I mean, and if he does, I mean, this could really, I mean, not just him, but I mean, really can jumpstart people's careers, right?
Yeah.
Take them to the next level, and then start getting offers for different teams and stuff like that. So there's a lot at stake. It's just a shame that it's run by a bunch of criminals, basically.
I mean,
so,
yeah.
So yeah, I don't really know. Other than just completely boycotting, I don't know. But I mean, it's going to take more than one team. It's going to take teams like, you know, like a France, an England, Brazil, Argentina to say no more, to really make an impact. It can't be even us or, you know, like one team here or there to do it. I don't think.
Is that what the U.S. men's national team did in 2018? Was that just a boycott?
Oh,
yeah, we tried it, and it just, you know, yeah, that's what it was.
They just didn't tell anyone that's what they were doing. It's just, that's, you know, we did it. We were just doing it without the press involved. So
they threw the game down in Trinidad. They were like, no, we're boycotting. Let's lose. So
Russia's a long trip. Let's not go there. Yeah.
So, well, that's a good segue. So we, you know, we're going to be, like I said, next week we're going to start our group shows where we have guests on to talk about different teams, and we're all taking different teams ourselves. I'm taking Switzerland and Netherlands. David, you have a few teams. Vaughn, you've got Belgium. Who else do you have?
Belgium and Korea. The southern.
Korea.
Yeah, South Korea. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. And then, David, you're covering the U.S., of course, and then who else do you have?
France.
You have France. Yes.
Yes. It's going to be super interesting.
But we're all, you know, U.S. fans, of course, and so let's talk a little bit about the U.S. men's national team. Vaughn, I'll kick it over to you. There's some injury concerns, but what are your kind of overall thoughts about the squad?
You know, it kind of feels like the Charlotte FC, you know, we're jumping into the season where I'm like, I'm happy to be here. My expectations aren't high. Things could go really well. If they don't, it's going to be okay. We'll be all right in the long run. But really, my expectation for the team is they've got to try and get results for sure against Iran and Wales, don't get absolutely humiliated against England. If we come out and get that magic result or win against England, I think it's going to do a lot for support of the sport in this country. If we can get out of the group, if we can somehow top the group and play just positive soccer that makes us proud to support the U.S. men's national team, it's going to go a long way in getting the young kids that aren't into the sport yet to buy in. The ones that are into the sport, they become addicted to the sport. And the people that are really have a vested interest in the success of the U.S. men's national team in this cycle for the next cycle, for us getting to the 2026 hosting World Cup, I think it is in everybody's best interest for the U.S. men's national team to come out and play positively and give us something to be excited about. And if they can make it past the group stage and into the round of 16, to me, that would be a win.
David, what are your thoughts?
I feel like I'm falling into a trap here, just like Charlotte FC, where I'm getting my expectations too high, unlike Vaughn, where Vaughn's coming in with a level-headed approach, like, hey, I'm just happy to be here. In my mind, I think it's because it's been so long since we've been in the World Cup. It feels like forever ago. Like, I'm like, man, we've got to do good. We've got some really good young players. We've shown flashes in the past few years of like what excellence could be, like going back to us playing Mexico, right, and showing that hey, we can compete with these teams, and that was almost 2 years ago, right? For me, like you hit on the nail, or you hit the nail on the head there, Vaughn. Where it's for me, we have to be able to walk away with points against Wales. Selfishly, like England is a must-win. Like it's Thanksgiving week. It's right after Thanksgiving. People are going to be at home. It's going to be a national game. It's going to get a lot of eyes on it. And that casual soccer fan or that casual person that's going to be watching that game is going to be there. And if we just lay a goose egg and just make it this very sloppy, even though some of us will be happy probably with the 0-0 draw to get a point, if we just do that on national TV the week of Thanksgiving with all these people watching, there's going to be like, nah, I'm good. Who cares? Kind of thing, right? So I'm hoping this is our 94 moment a little bit where it's like this spark and we can get past the group stage. I am interested in Swift and Vaughn. I'd love to get your perspective on it. But if we don't do well, is this it for Berhalter? Is this like for both of you? Are you happy with the work that he's been doing, or is it time for a change if he doesn't get past the group stage, or if we look excellent? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if we don't make it past the group stage, he's gone. I think a lot of people wish he was gone already. I think that would be probably the excuse to say, yeah, you had your shot, you had your cycle, didn't make it out of the group stage, you're gone. I will say I've seen a lot of people worry about the lead up to this tournament. We haven't been doing well. I'm one of those people that's okay with that. I want to be really horrible before we go into the World Cup. I think when you get a little bit of humility and you show, or you get shown that, hey, we got a lot of work to do. We really can't sit back, and doesn't matter who we play, we have to be ready. I'm one of those people like Charlotte FC when we had that horrible preseason. I'm like, good. I don't want to win out in preseason. Like I usually feel like the opposite happens. Like, oh, we're 5-0 in preseason. I'm like, great. That means what? And then you get into the regular season and everything falls apart. So I'm one of those people like I like to struggle early because I think that builds character anyway. And with this squad, I think there's been some kind of like, hey, we need to sit back and kind of look at some things and reassess. So I'm looking.
We're all going in with the Estamos Jodidos level. we are screwed, and it's only up from here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that. Now, I'm also one of those people too that I think the England game will be very close. Where I am actually afraid are the other two games, because I think we typically play at the level of competition. I'm not saying the other two teams are not good. I just worry there might be like a trap game in there where we lose or drop points where we shouldn't. I'm actually fairly confident about the England game, to be honest, because it is a big key matchup. Right before Thanksgiving and everything like that. But so next week we'll go a little more in depth because we'll have Matt Chantry on. He's going to take England. We got another Matt. He's going to be taking Wales. So we have the group covered. So that should be a lot of fun. But anything else from either one of you guys about the men's national team?
I want to add that, we have to remember that also this group of players is very young and very green to the World Cup. We're one of the least experienced squads going into the World Cup. So, that's kind of the other marker that I'd like to see is for that confidence to be built for that growth for Pulisic, for Reina, for McKennie, for Weah, for Aronson, like for Adams, right? Like these are the guys that are going to be the core. And they are going to potentially be with this club for 2 more cycles. So Berhalter, right? Part of the question with Berhalter is his style of play, are the players executing it? Do we have the players that can execute it? And do we see progress? And I think that's the challenge. Like, I like Berhalter a lot because I was seeing that progress, but it's inconsistent, right? Like his record is actually very good. The way we've performed in some competitions, and the way that we've been getting results against Mexico, and that I really feel we are a better team in the region. Granted, Canada has leapfrogged us in a lot of ways. But I think that the players that are on the squad, if they can gain some of that experience and confidence through this tournament, it can bode very well for us through the next 2 cycles as we supplement the squad around those guys as they enter their primes. Like, none of those guys are in their primes yet. And so that's what's really exciting for me, is like we're seeing that growth already. We have that kind of belief in these players that are getting to play earlier in their career at bigger clubs throughout Europe. And also starting to see more players like Aronson, where they're coming through MLS and then making the jump to Europe. And so I think we're growing. We're getting there. That's why I'm saying there is that progress. So for Berhalter, could I see him getting canned? Yeah, I could see him getting canned if we get played off. But what's the next best option? I think everybody is naturally looking at Jesse Marsch. But Jesse Marsch and his style of play is very demanding and something that is going to be a total flip of style for these players. So that's what I want to see. I just want to see the players play with belief, and I want the fans to remember and keep some grace for these players.
And I think that's really important, Vaughn, is that if we show that improvement and we actually do play decent, it's going to kick off that next World Cup cycle even more. It's going to really lay the foundation for that expectation of like that next cycle of players coming in. It's going to be that much bigger for us to be a host nation. It's almost like a storybook, right? Like our fairy tale. You build up the foundation. You've got the players that are young coming in. They get the experience of their first World Cup, and then we host a World Cup, and then it could be even like heavier expectations, which could be good and bad from these guys. But for me, I hear you. I do want them to be able to grow and show some growth, but I selfishly want them to play more than just 3 games. So I hope they get past that group stage. So,
do you guys remember that time that Julian Green went to the World Cup and we didn't take Landon Donovan, and Julian Green was supposed to be amazing, and he sucks?
He scored. He scored.
He kind of accidentally scored. I was never a fan of Julian Green. I thought it was a stupid decision, and yeah, whatever. We see where he is now. Anyway, moving on.
You 2 are just rubbing salt in the wound about this past cycle or 2. Like, y'all are just like, man, it's just you're bringing back just memories I tried to just push into the corner and make disappear. So
I absolutely.
Hey, we're this far in. We haven't said Kuva, so now we have. So.
I hated Jurgen Klinsmann, by the way. I thought he was terrible. So
yeah.
Let's go to fan questions now. How about that? All right, so I'm gonna ask the questions for you guys. We got a ton of questions in. A lot of them were going a lot in depth on certain teams, so I'm going to hold those off for next week. But we do have a couple of good ones. The first one is from Bridget McCall. With all the recent injury reports, which teams do you see being most affected by said injuries? Vaughn, I'll start with you.
Well, I'll go with 2. I think Portugal is a team that had a higher chance to go deep in this tournament. Many people were speaking very highly of them. And with Diogo Jota and Pedro Neto out, it's going to be tough for them to replace those guys. And I think the expectations for them are not going to be as high as they could have been entering the tournament. And then the other is who I'm going to be highlighting. I'm really hoping he's available, is South Korea and Son. It could be really messy for them because they literally will ride or die by his performance in the World Cup. And if he's not able to go...
His eye, is it eye socket or something?
Yeah, it's an eye
right?
injury.
Yeah.
So that's a country that already was kind of struggling in form heading into the tournament. And they're in a very tough group. And I think if they are missing their best player, it's not going to make things any easier.
Yeah. David, what about you?
So I'm going to go with two, and I'm not going to go into too in-depth because it'll ruin my in-depth analysis of one of the teams. Well, actually, both my teams. But one is France. So reigning champs, 2018 World Cup winners, right? Has had some recent injuries. I think that's going to be a really tough for them to overcome, especially, I mean, like you touched on it earlier, Matt, we're coming into a World Cup that's in the middle of the European season, right? And a lot of these players are still playing for their clubs, and they're getting hurt, right? So I do think that's going to affect them and their chances. They've got a pretty tough group as well. But I honestly think some of the recent injuries could potentially affect the U.S. men's national team as well. Weston McKennie, Matt Turner, right? Matt Turner's played pretty well, Mr. Arsenal over here. And who knows what's going on with him at this point. Arsenal's been pretty hush-hush about it. So I personally am not going to be very happy if Matt Turner's hurt and we have to go up against Wales and see him not play. Weston McKennie is going to be someone that's also going to be slotted as a starter for the men's national team. And just based off of Berhalter's selections for some of his rosters, who do you play instead of McKennie with that stuff? So I do think that could affect both teams pretty well. And unfortunately for the U.S., it's not one of those things where we have super players in depth to be able to fill in for some of these injuries. So,
yeah, you mentioned Matt Turner. He didn't play in the Europa League tie this week, so that's concerning. And I have some question marks anyway about our goalkeeping squad. I like Matt Turner. Not a fan of Zach Steffen. Sorry for all you Zach Steffen fans out there. I think
there's
he's
not
always
many.
been.
I think you're fine.
I don't know. I think a lot of people like him. To me, he's been very suspect always. I haven't been a fan. But you mentioned France. France has a super deep team, so I think they would be okay as opposed to like someone like Portugal.
Sure.
But yeah, it's going to be very interesting because they won't have everybody available and they won't be as strong. So, I mean, this could be a very interesting tournament, to say the least, when, you got your defending champs kind of missing a ton of folks.
Well, and we'll talk about this on another episode, but I think even though with France with that depth, if you just look at the group stage for them, they're playing against Australia. So that's Riley McCree, great Australia there. But then also too, Denmark is a team that's an up-and-coming team, right? They're pretty good. In fact, I think they've played pretty well in Europa and those kind of things like that as well. So it's a pretty tough group stage for them to go into. And as a defending champ, you're always going to have that mark on your back where people want to take you out, right? And so France has got to watch out a little bit for that.
Yeah, very cool. All right, this next question is from Kate Kosterski. Who's the team that you think is going to be the surprise fairy tale, and who's going to make a run? David, we'll start with you on this one.
So, I mean, selfishly, I would love to say the U.S., which would be a huge fairy tale kind of, standing there to be able to say that. I don't know if it's so much a fairy tale, but especially with Denmark being ranked 10th in I think FIFA rankings, but I think Denmark has a chance to make some noise and get past the group stage and be able to do pretty well. So those are the two teams I would say. I would selfishly want the U.S., but I think Denmark is going to be the one that actually makes some noise moving forward.
I think if the U.S. gets out of the group stage, if they win the group, they will probably have to play the Netherlands. If they finish second, they'll probably have to play, could be Ecuador, actually. But, Vaughn, what about you? Who is your fairy tale?
My fairy tale team, hands down, is Canada. They were the kings of CONCACAF, and they absolutely shredded everybody in CONCACAF through qualification. They are in a very tough group with both Belgium and Croatia. But I really think that Canada could surprise some people, right? This is their foray into the World Cup. And they have a lot of the pieces that a team needs to be able to advance and make it into the round of 16. They've got good attackers in Jonathan David and in Kyle Larin. They have a world best 11 player in Alphonso Davies. They have Borjan. They got goalkeepers. They got Estaquiao. Like there are a lot of things to like about this Canada team that I don't think they should be taken lightly. So they're the kind of team that if they are able to advance into the round of 16, first of all, that in and of itself I think would be a fairy tale for Canada. And I really think that they are built in a way that they could steal some results against some really good squads and maybe even make one of those runs into the even final 8, and that would be absolutely magical for Canada. And then I think you also asked, that second part of the question was another team that was like a favorite. I'm staying in that group. Belgium, to me, they as recently, in fact, they may even currently be FIFA number 2. So you just went over the odds of teams, and Belgium was like way down the list. They have Kevin De Bruyne, like
Yep.
they are loaded with Courtois. Like they have weapons, and I don't think that they should be taken lightly. They're a team that if they're ranked second in the world and FIFA rankings, they can go on a run. So those are my 2 squads that I'd like to highlight.
Yeah, I think Canada has a legit shot of getting out of the group. And as for Belgium, I believe they are 14-1. Those are the odds, and yeah, they are behind the Netherlands and Germany as far as the odds. Again, this will probably change. We'll update this as the tournament gets closer, especially next week as we start to talk about group play and everything like that. But let's move on to the next question. Richard Clark has a great question. I love this one. What is the best way to tell your boss that you won't be able to attend any meetings that start at 8 a.m., 11 a.m., or 2 p.m. From late November to mid-December? Vaughn, I'll start with you.
I got COVID again. I'm going to have to work from home. And that's how I'm going to be staying busy at 8, 11, and 2. And my internet reception's really bad, so sorry I can't make the Zoom. That's how.
All right, David, what is your advice for Richard here?
Well, I would say time your request offs really intentionally. So if you're like me looking at the U.S. team, Thanksgiving week, hey, I might take a day or 2 off before Thanksgiving, extend my Thanksgiving vacation a little bit, and look at going into December a little bit from that time frame as well. Maybe you take a Friday, Monday off here and there from that perspective. But yeah, I don't know. I think Vaughn has me beat in terms of reasons to be able to get out of it for an extended period of time. I think the real winners here are the ones who work from home and be able to pull up that TV in the background, that screen in the background, and still watch it from that perspective. So
yeah, I would advise blocking off. If you work from home, you could definitely block off your schedule so no one can schedule a meeting. And then also too, like I've had jobs where I just was very upfront, like, hey, I'm a massive soccer fan. World Cup every 4 years. It's kind of like the Olympics. I feel like people watch the Olympics at work and stuff like that. And just say, hey, the U.S. is playing at this time. I would like to watch it. So, maybe honesty too would work in certain situations. But sometimes, you might have to be like, I'm sick. I didn't
lean full FIFA. You can be nefarious too.
Start sending those envelopes with money in between the doors at work is what you need to start doing. So.
Yeah, slip some bribes. Yeah.
I guess it just depends on who your boss is too. Like you could go either way, right?
It's very true.
That's funny. Richard, I hope you can get some time off to watch the game. That's hilarious. All right, next question is from Russell Varner, who just had a little baby. So congrats to him. That's pretty awesome. He was going to try to join the show's coming up in a couple weeks. I don't know. With the newborn, we'll see. But he always asks great questions, and the one he asked this time, with the recent trend in World Cups, is that the defending champs, they tend to struggle, to say the least. Will France, we talked about them a little bit, will France be the team to break that slump? David, I'll start with you since you are covering them.
I'm going to say selfishly, yes, I hope they do. So then that way Matt Swift has to keep me on the show longer, and I get to talk about France and practice my Duolingo.
You do know you're a co-host,
French.
so you're always going to be on the show, right?
Well, it just means I get to talk more is what it is. So, but no, I do. I mean, you touched on it earlier. Even though France is having some injuries, they do have some depth. And so if there is a team that's ever going to be able to kind of, buck the norm, I think this is a squad that's going to be able to do it. I think Denmark, like I shared earlier, I think Denmark's going to have some chance to make some noise, but it's got to be that top two, right? And I think even with France in that group, if it could be them and Denmark, or I think that's what's expected. That's all you need. So,
yeah, Vaughn, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, France. What helps for them is that I think they play fairly pragmatically, right? Like Didier Deschamps is not afraid to play a deep defensive set and catch teams in transition, and they have guys that can score in a flash. So can France repeat? Yeah. Do I think it's very likely? No. I really think if they end up missing N'Golo Kante, that's not going to be good. It's going to be hard to replace him. And I think that the club as a whole, like you said, it's hard to repeat. It's hard to do that 4 years apart. And I think the odds alone would say that somebody else is going to step up to the plate and lift the trophy.
Yeah, I think you're right there. The next question is from Eric Hill. He has two questions, and Matt Nolan has a question in here. Big shout out to Matt Nolan, longtime listener, so big shout out to him. But Eric asked, what do you consider to be the World Cup stats threshold that determines whether or not Swiderski gets major interest that could lure him away from Charlotte? And Matt Nolan's kind of wanting to know, do we want Swiderski to even do well? So that's kind of Eric and Matt's first question. So, David, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts? What do you think is, I guess kind of what Eric is asking, what is success? What's going to be that determining factor for Swiderski?
I think the stat that you're going to see that's going to make the most impact is goals. If Swiderski or any player scores a goal in the World Cup, it's going to make an impact for them positively in some way or fashion, right? And I think with Swiderski in particular, Charlotte's been and Zoran's been pretty open about it's going to take a lot to take him away from this team. They want him here. He's our first DP. He makes a huge impact. But if he scores some goals in the World Cup for Poland, it's going to be super hard to not say no. Especially if it's a team like that plays in Italy, if it's a team that plays in England that comes knocking and says, hey, we'll gladly pay $15 million, $20 million for this player because he scored goals in the World Cup and got to be on SportsCenter and got to see highlights and got his name out there, right? The World Cup is what makes and breaks players' names sometimes. And so I think if he scores some goals, I think we would lose him from that perspective. But would one goal do it? Not necessarily, but if he has multiple, I think that's what will do it. So
I don't know. I think if he scores one, we're in trouble. But Vaughn, what do you think?
Yeah, goal contributions, goals and assists. If he ends up, feeding Lewandowski 3 times in one game, that'd go well. There's going to be people interested.
Yeah.
I think it just really boils down to that. Can he elevate his PR pitch to being the heir apparent to Lewandowski, right? If he goes out on to the World Cup and scores 2 goals, gets an assist, that's going to be the narrative. And if he outshines Lewandowski, that's going to be a big narrative. So that's really what it boils down to for me is Does he go out there? Does he play positively? Does he play well off of a player like Lewandowski? Does he grab those goals? And the calls are going to come in. Like every team in the world is going to be asking, why is this guy playing in MLS if he's scoring goals in the World Cup? You want to have that in your highlight reel for the rest of your career. He's at that right age. And I think the other thing that benefits us, Charlotte FC, is if he stays here, that's great for eyes on us. And if he actually gets that international attention, the market's already set for him. Yeah, Zoran's talked about 15 million or more. That's a lot. I mean, we're talking like Tati Castellanos wasn't getting those dollars. And Tati Castellanos was winning golden boots in MLS. So where the market is set is Adam Buksa, who is also a striker for the Polish national team, was bought for 4 million. Swiderski was for 5, and Buksa was sold to Lens in France, I believe it was Lens, for 10 million. Okay, so I don't think any club should be coming to Swiderski for under 10 million. So if we start getting 12 to 15 to $18 million offers after the World Cup, he could be gone.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about another Polish player that's on our team. So Eric also wants to know, do you see any chance of Józwiak breaking out and drawing interest elsewhere? David, what do you think?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't see him breaking out. Does he potentially get some minutes, something like that? Sure. But I think if I was a team other than MLS, I would be looking at him going, okay, you were at Derby, got hurt, was inconsistent in Derby. Then you went to MLS, and it took quite a while for you to really latch on to MLS. Struggled pretty early on even to see the pitch. Could be a Miguel thing, whatever it was, but on paper they're going to look at that. And didn't really contribute until the last 3 or 4 games of the season, right? And so I don't know if there's enough traction there or evidence for a team to be like, hey, I'm going to spend big on this player compared to Swiderski, right? Granted, could he go out into the World Cup and just make this gigantic impact? Sure. And then all of a sudden teams are going to come knocking, right? But I just don't see it, personally speaking, not at this time. He's much younger. I mean, he's, I think 21, 22, 23 years old. He's got a whole other cycle that he could potentially get some more minutes in later on. But I just don't see it, personally.
Vaughn, what are your thoughts?
He may not even make the squad. Like honestly. He made that initial list for Poland, but there's no guarantee he's even going to be in the tournament. So if he makes the tournament, do I expect him to get minutes? He could see the field. It also depends on how the games start going for Poland. But for Józwiak, I think that the ceiling was higher for him 6 months ago.
Yeah, I will say in his defense that he's been utilized too in different roles, and that's pretty helpful on a World Cup squad. I would like for both players to do well because I think it will draw a lot of attention to Charlotte FC, even if Swiderski is sold. I think that is very telling. And like I said, to have 2 players making an impact and doing well, I think would do us a lot of good. And I'm looking forward to watching Pollman play. To be honest, especially Swiderski, to see how he does.
I think if you're Charlotte, if he does do well, like you're ecstatic because you just bought a player for, I don't want to say cheap, but fairly cheap compared to Carroll. And if he does well, like you just doubled, tripled, quadrupled your investment into a player, right? Even if it is back to a team in championship or whatever it is, right? But we'll see.
Yeah, definitely opens up a lot of options. So that is all of the fan questions. Like I said, we got a lot more, but we're going to hold those off for for starting next week. I really appreciate everybody sending those in. David, Vaughn, anything else that you want to cover before I put you both on the spot?
I'm just going to say that, is this where we get to sing the "I believe that we will win" chant? Is that what we're going to do now?
No. This is not that segment. I think we're dropping that segment altogether.
Okay, good.
So this can change because a lot of the squads haven't even been announced yet. We don't know what's going to happen. Who is your early prediction to win the whole entire thing? Vaughn, I will start with you this time. Give David a little bit of time to think about this. He looks nervous.
You've heard me hype up Belgium. I do think that they have an interesting shot. I would love to see them make a run. But in all reality, I think it's Brazil's to lose.
Yeah. It's funny. Belgium, their golden era, I think, was last cycle, right? And they kind of fell a little bit short. It'd be interesting to see what they do this tournament. But I think you might be right, Vaughn, about Brazil. They're stacked. Argentina, I think, it will do fairly well. I think there's a scenario where Argentina and Brazil could play in the semifinals. I think, depending how things line up, they would be on the same side. But anyway, David, you've had time to think about it. Who you got?
Well, I don't want to be boring and just say Brazil as well, like Vaughn. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say something outlandish and crazy. So, I was like, who could I say to just make some buzz? But I'm going to say Canada, just to be completely different and off the wall.
That's absurd, David.
It is absurd. But if you ask me my unabsurd question or answer, I would say Brazil. But if you want me to say, like, who do I think would be great to make some noise, I'm going to say Canada.
God, that would be
crazy, right?
I can't even fathom Canada winning the World Cup.
There would be a lot of really salty U.S. men's national team fans.
I would. I think Brazil has a really good shot. I also think Argentina, just with Messi's storyline, how many games he's played and all that stuff. I thought I read somewhere today, I can't remember who posted it, I'm sorry, he would play his 1,000th game for Argentina in the final.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's at 997 or 998 games, something like that right now, something crazy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly where he is, but that would be a pretty cool storyline. I think Brazil, Argentina. Other than that, I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. You've got Germany, you've got Belgium. So it should be good. Like I said, we'll revisit this as the tournament goes along.
You know what's interesting, though, is that none of us said
aside from your Canada hot take.
Well, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I would say it's interesting. None of us had France, who has shown that they've won it recently and has depth. But the players that they have out too,
I just don't. They have the depth. I just don't see it happening for them.
Yep.
All right. Anything else, guys?
I believe that we will win.
I believe we will win. All right. We will end that there. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Vaughn, thanks for hopping on. We'll be eagerly waiting your group stage commentary. We're going to have this on our regular podcast channels, wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll also have this on YouTube. We'll be doing a lot more videos. So be sure, like I said, to subscribe, like. Starting next week, we'll get into group play. We're going to start, of course, with Group A and B. Got a lot of cool guests coming on. So looking forward to that. David, anything else?
That's it, man. I'm good to go.
All right, everybody have a good night, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.